Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fireside chat for June 2023. My name is Jill Brown. I am the Data Visualization Society Programs Director and will also be your moderator for our conversation today. Thank you for joining live, or thank you for watching the stream if you're coming to us after the live event. We're super excited to have a conversation today about Data Viz, the Art of Insightful AI-llumination. You can blame me for the really corny title, but I did ask ChatGPT what a great title for a Data Viz and AI talk would be, and this was the best contender. So just a little bit of orientation before we get too far into the conversation today. If you are new to the Data Visualization Society, we were founded to serve as the professional home for those working across the data viz discipline while leading other people into this growing and dynamic field, and really to increase the visibility and value of data viz to the general public. So our mission is to connect data visualizers across tech stacks, subject areas, and experience. And we're all super excited to have you in the conversation today. So we do fireside chats around monthly about topics of interest to the community. So this data viz and AI topic, we had a topics in data viz kind of chat in Slack a couple weeks ago. We had some unconference conversations at Outlier in May, and it's just been a topic of conversation. So we wanted to bring a bunch of people here today to talk through their perspectives and ideas about how data viz and AI can kind of work together and maybe what some of the challenges are. So we pulled folks from those different conversations to have a chat here today. So what we're going to do is bring them all on stage and go through and do a round robin of introductions. So let's see, we have Julianna, we have Tabata, we have Francisco, and we have Elijah. So welcome everybody to our Data Viz and AI fireside chat. So Julianna, I'd like to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the space that you work in currently, how that intersects with Data Viz, and your interest in Data Viz and AI?
Absolutely. So my name is Julianna Langston. I'm a software developer from Durham, North Carolina, and I work a lot in web development. But most relevantly here, I have been working on an open source project called Chart to Music, turns into music so the blind can hear data. I consider myself an accessibility engineer, and I've been working at the intersection of data visualization and visual impairments for the last decade. I'm really interested in AI specifically because I'm a little worried that as we continue with AI and data viz, that we might start leaving the blind community behind. And I feel like projects like Chart to Music or other open source projects that try to bridge that gap need to be at the forefront of conversations around making sure that we don't have this gap widen between where the industry wants to go and the people being left behind by it.
Great, thank you. Super excited you're here. I think the Data Viz community also feels that accessibility is really important, so it's a great voice to have in this conversation. Elijah, let's jump to you next.
Sure. My name is Elijah Meeks. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Notable. Notable is a notebook company. I've been building data visualization products in Notable for the last few years, and lately we released a plugin for ChatGPT, and we saw tremendous interest in it. So we've seen a lot of folks using this plugin to do data analysis, which always necessarily includes data visualization. And I'm deeply interested in how AI is enabling folks to do data analysis, data science, data visualization in ways that we didn't expect, especially folks who can't code, especially folks who felt like they were not part of that community. And I am also, like Julianna, I'm deeply concerned that if we do this without thoughtfulness, that we will either reify like existing biases in data visualization and leave folks behind, or enable folks who've never had access to data visualization to do it poorly. Like that's the chief concern I have.
Great, thank you. Super excited to have you here as well. And I think the topic of AI and inclusivity too is one that comes up a lot, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about today. Tabata, can you please introduce yourself and say hello?
Yes, thanks for having me. My name is Tabata. I'm speaking from Aotearoa, New Zealand. You may know me as Data Rocks on social media. I am the founder, data visualization designer, and sole employee of Data Rocks. So it's a one-girl band shop. And I think my interest in AI is more of a curiosity one. Like everybody's jumping into the bandwagon, and there's a very big high hype around what it can or cannot do for data viz. And there's a lot of things that people say or that just generate anxiety into the community, and like, oh my god, am I going to lose my job if I'm going to do this and whatever. And I think there's a lot of potential to help people in getting better at what they do and amplifying what's good about data viz. But at the same time, there's just as much risk of doing things very poorly and amplifying the wrong things. So I think it's more of a curiosity for me right now. I have used a little bit on my work, but I like exploring stuff that nobody's really doing. Like the other day, I tried doing a color palette with ChatGPT. So it's this type of thing that I'm kind of curious about. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Just the perspective of what are users going to be doing with this technology, and how is it going to function in kind of our day-to-day data viz practice. So
yeah,
welcome. Awesome. Francisco, how about you?
Hello, I'm Francisco. I am based in Barcelona, but I'm from the south of Brazil. I am one of the co-founders of Odd Data and Design Studio, where we design all sorts of data products, most of them data visualizations, but also help clients build databases, metrics, algorithms, and AI systems. I am the tech side of the company, so I help the strategy and design team to understand the tools and choose the tools that they should be using to design the best data products we can. I'm very curious about this because I think data viz practitioners are in a very privileged spot, in the sense that we know a lot about data, we know a lot about technology, design, maybe social sciences or other area of expertise. So we're in a very good spot to help understand and maybe even build those AI systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be a really important part of how everything evolves. So this is a great panel. Really looking forward to the discussion. So I kind of wanted to start at the beginning. So why do you all think we're talking about AI or artificial intelligence and data visualization? What's novel and exciting about this as a topic?
It's a fun, shiny toy. That's a big reason right now. Like we have this fun, shiny toy on the horizon, and we just like want to poke at it and see what happens. That's fun.
And everyone is talking about it, right? So at least we have to take a look at it. And I think, well, it has everything to do with data. So yeah, we're in a good position to look at it.
If you think about the origins of ChatGPT was a demo basically of OpenAI's product. And so they just wanted to expose people to OpenAI's product so they could sell more sort of LLM bandwidth. And it turned into one of the most popular websites in the world now. Right? You know, there are something that I can't remember, 1 billion visits a month, something absurd. And so I think that it's this access, right? That natural language provides a kind of access that coding doesn't, that even really well-designed UI and UX doesn't. And when we see natural language being used not just for natural language responses, but for structured responses, for creating code, creating sort of schemas and things like that, then we, to Julianna's point, we want to say, well, what can this do? You know, how far does this go? And what does this allow? What does this allow us to do? And I think with data visualization, we are well positioned as folks who have experience with ETLs, whether we're making them or not. We're sort of experienced working with the data engineers and the data scientists who are creating the raw material. for learnings. We're working with folks to do metric design. And that does put us in a particularly good position to create natural language descriptions of these use cases, things that we've probably described on our own in collaborative settings where we've tried to explain to folks what's going on to build some kind of data product. And now we have that conversation with the AI and we find out, or at least I have found out, that it's pretty good about doing all of the things that I relied on other data professionals to do. And, you know, as we've heard in this conversation and before, does that, you know, at what point is it pretty good at doing what I do so that I have to find a new career, right?
I think furthermore, one of the big things that's exciting is we feel like it could turn into doing anything. We are living in the prologue to Star Trek, and that's really exciting to imagine the Star Trek that will truly happen. So it's also just exciting to all be collectively writing sci-fi just together while watching it unfold.
Yeah, I was going to mention the sci-fi element of it. I think part of the popularity is that AI has been in the collective imaginary for so long. Like, people talk about it. You have books about it. You have movies about it for the past centuries. And this is the first time I think that the general public finally had a hint of what that could look like. Like, it's a little bit like, oh, now this is like a sci-fi movie. The computer can do stuff that only I could do, which is exciting and scary, right? I have a word for that. Is thrillifying. It's thrilling and terrifying at the same time in equal measures.
Well, when I was first exposed to it, when I first finally got on ChatGPT, because I was a late user of it, because I thought it was another, you know, crypto hype kind of thing. I didn't really care. The first thing I did, Tabata, was to ask it questions about how it evaluated knowledge. And I said, well, you know, you're an AI, and it's constantly telling you I'm an AI. I can't talk to you about this, or you know, I can't necessarily say this because it's uncertain. I said, okay, well, give me all the topics you think are so complex and uncertain that any kind of answer you give will be kind of misleading. And it gave me this list of topics. And then I said, hey, now evaluate them, because I said complexity and uncertainty, give me numbers for them. And I did a data visualization of it, showing how they were related and how they evaluated them. And in the scary part of it, right, it came back and said, well, all of these math subjects are really complex. And so that's why I can't answer them. And then there's all these weird, soft humanities subjects that are really uncertain. They're not that complex, but they're really uncertain. And, you know, that was my primary focus at first, was the bias that was inherent in this system that was built by a bunch of engineers, that was trained on natural language in a way that was going to be influenced by the way the model was designed. And how it seemed like the conclusions it had come to was that math was hard, whereas humans are squishy and weird. And that, to me, you know, was part of that terrifying aspect, right? Was that we were going to come to this point where we built a machine, an AI, that was really good at what I referred to when I was doing digital humanities as one side of the school, right? It was really good at one side of the school, and the other side of the school, it was perfectly happy to hallucinate and just make stuff up about it. Nobody really cared. But then, you know, discovered that a lot of the documents that had been trained on were coding documents, were all of the work that we've been doing and putting into the public space. You know, all of these GitHub gists and all of these notebooks, and it was very good at writing code. It was very good at writing sort of analysis and following these processes. And that was the thrilling part of it. So I totally agree with thrillifying. I think that you should definitely patent the word and get a nickel every time somebody says it.
I don't know. I want to push back slightly on it being good at math and programming. And this might just be because I have backgrounds in math and programming. And whenever you look at ChatGPT, it is really bad at the thing you know about. So ChatGPT is very confident that 3 + 3 = 7. And when you say, but it doesn't, you're like, it's right. You're right. It actually adds to 5. You're like, did no one add just doing math to this program. It is good at just the language side of it.
Yeah.
It is really good at the thing that it may say is squishy, because all of the people it's trying to mimic would say it's squishy, and so it's very good at that squishy. I think it is a great insight into how we talk about ourselves, because it is just mimicking the most professional version of like humanity's historical record that exists right now. But
absolutely.
it is not great at the programming or the math when you actually try to do the thing it says it would work.
Well, the interesting thing there, Julianna, is you're right. It's a large language model, so it's trained on language and predicting language, and it's really good at being confident about things that it's wrong about. But what's interesting is we can't look at any of these tools in isolation, right? We can't think of a single tool as being the only thing that we use to address any kind of complex problem.
Absolutely.
And so what is interesting is that ChatGPT might be bad at math, like the large language model might be bad at math, but it's good at writing code. And then the code we can evaluate, and the code when run is good at doing math. And what's great about ChatGPT is when it hallucinates and writes the wrong code, what we found at least is we say, hey, you did that wrong. And it says, oh, let me fix that. And it's really good at fixing that. And so, we're still not at the point where there's no human in the loop, but we have gotten to the point where somebody who doesn't know how to do data processing, doesn't know how to create data viz, doesn't know how to get access to data, can go and put in these prompts and get back an entire data-driven document that has the processing, that has the data viz, that has the analysis of it, and it's remarkably good at it. Is it a principal engineer level of good at it? No, but it is, to me at least, it's surprisingly good when paired with these other capabilities.
Yeah, I would say as a developer, it feels like a junior developer who does need a strong senior developer code review going on. And I find this really great for JavaScript. So if I want to make, if I want to use a D3 or a charting library that maybe I have never personally worked with, and I need to build a bar chart, I could go dig through their documentation, or I could go to ChatGPT and say, I want a bar chart. Here's my data. Show me the code that generates that. And then it can go ahead and generate it for me. And I don't need to go read through documentation. I don't need to understand it. I don't need to necessarily set up a code sandbox to get started on it. I can get rolling with data visualization and just skip over that boring part and just get straight to the thing I want to do as a person who already has data and already kind of like knows what I want that data to look like. I don't know if you all have also tried to go through that and tried to get play around with new tools to produce your data visualizations. But I have found that it is nice to get you over that initial like Googling the Medium post that says, here's how you do a thing first step, to the point that I assume there will be no more Medium posts like that very soon.
Right now it feels like a very energetic, but like an intern, like with a lot of energy and time and effort, but no experience. So like you said, Julianna, like it will be bad at the things you know about. So if I look at code, I'll be like, this code is not good. If I look at poetry, I'll think it's amazing because I don't know anything about poetry. But yeah, just a few months ago, it could barely speak and make sense, and now it's doing those things. So if someone is watching the recording of this session, probably some of the things we're talking about are like solved already. So yeah, just a disclaimer.
Yeah, and since it is so good at language, I imagine you'll probably that reports of like, here's some background on the stuff, here's a chart of what's happening, let's talk more about that chart, let's look at this data from some other angles, let's talk more about that whole language reporting process. If you do not like writing essays like I did, like I absolutely hated in school, then that suddenly becomes so much easier. You can just tell ChatGPT, write up all of this, and I'll go through and edit out all the hallucinations, and then I can be in charge of making the pictures look pretty. I can put them everywhere. Maybe tell ChatGPT, okay, come up with what I want, and I'm going to edit it from there, just to like get me over that first blank page hump. So I'm liking the language part, because that's not the part I want to do. I want to do my part, and it can take over all the things I find annoying, as long as I'm willing to edit it afterwards.
And going back into what you said, Julianna, about that it's really bad at the things you know about. My background is actually social sciences. So I do the writing of long essays much more than I do the math part. And then I happen to be a data visualization designer. But it's funny because even in the language piece, it's that classic. It depends on what it was fed to learn as language. It speaks like a marketeer. It speaks like somebody who writes a short blog post because they want to hype their SEO on the website, because that's what it was fed, right? So if you want to ask, for example, all right, I have a blog and I write book reviews, right? So if you say summarize this book, the way it writes is really funny because it writes, well, apart from the fact that it hallucinates and invents stuff and it doesn't really know any books, it writes like somebody in high school would write an essay to the teacher. It doesn't really write at a level very much above that. It can sound very smart, but it really isn't. There's no substance in the content. There's a bunch of words and it's well structured, but there's really no substance. What I feel like even in language it's good at doing is exactly the same thing that I use it for code. Give me an initial thing, but assist me into making this better somehow. So it's really good at reviewing and telling you, okay, this is wrong, this could have been written better, or this could, to give you advice, pretty much as it is with code. Like, how can I optimize this formula, or how can I optimize this piece of code? And then it's good at optimizing it with you, but it's not good at giving you the first output at all, even language wise, because it's really, even in the language term, it's really basic.
Can we do a quick survey? How are we using these large language models? Are you just entirely using the ChatGPT interface?
I don't so I think I have played with ChatGPT, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion a couple of times, but then I didn't use it after that. The biggest point I've seen for ChatGPT is the API interfaces to it, and watching the various open source libraries that people are building out to say, like, here, if you just give me some text, it'll draw me a chart, or give me the data and I'll come up with the best chart for you. And looking at how those APIs are being used, and exactly what part is being done by the AI to generate the data versus what part was crafted by the tool itself. So I've mostly just been looking at the JavaScript implementations of ChatGPT APIs.
Yeah, I think I tried DALL-E. I tried ChatGPT, Midjourney. There's Firefly, which is the Adobe one, which is quite different because they vouch not to use copyrighted content. So the results are very different between them for the image generators. But AI is
DALL-E,
everywhere.
though, DALL-E is super creepy. Like, everything you give it just gives you these like nightmare visions. So highly recommend it if it's really late at night and you want to be creeped out.
Yeah, Midjourney is more friendly in that sense. Yeah, people don't have like 25 fingers in each hand or something. But AI is everywhere now. So if you're asking me where I'm using AI, if I am using Grammarly, there's an AI assistant there now. If I'm using Notion, there's an AI assistant there now. Figma released an AI assistant. Power BI has a co-pilot. So everybody has AI embedded in it to some extent right now. Like, everybody's jumping to the bandwagon, which is concerning and fun, but at the same time, it's like some of these things are like, why though?
Yeah, I think at this point is the shiny toy, like Julianna said. Like, we're giving it a try, and I think we should try it. But yeah, definitely be more critical in the future. Like, does your product really need AI? I've been using it mostly for Copilot for coding, and my design team uses a lot of Midjourney for mood boards, just to get ideas, to get it flowing, but not a lot in the end product. How about you, Elijah? I know you build like the Notable plugin, but do you use
so
it?
the Notable plugin uses the API. There's a plugin architecture, and I'm not the expert at this. I just sort of watch while other people do this very well at the company. Allows you to add more assistance, add more context, expose functionality to the kind of our particular product or whatever it is that you're integrating it into. So you can actually start to tell it like the kind of role you want it to take on. You can provide it with additional context so you can adjust the way that it responds. You can have it respond as an API. You can have it take on the responsibilities of like a particular role. Like there was a paper that somebody just showed where they went through and had it connect to some database and said, well, one of these LLMs is going to be the writer, one of them is going to be a reviewer, one of them is going to be a researcher, and they're going to all sort of work together in teams. There's also the auto GPT thing that builds in memory. We have that too because the notebook itself becomes memory, and so it allows you to have sort of longer term task breakdown and development, which I think provides some interesting examples for writing code especially, but actually building out more complex analysis too. What's interesting to me is that, we have stable diffusion models and we have LLMs, and neither of those are particularly well suited for data visualization, because data visualization is diagrammatical and schematic language. So the stable diffusion models think it's pictures, and pictures, you can't predict a bar chart, right? You can't predict an accurate bar chart using a stable diffusion model. And LLMs are thinking in language, and we don't have very good structural language about data visualization outside of code. And frankly, the code that we have is highly optimized on very simple use cases.
Yes.
And so as a result, I think, data visualization is particularly underserved by the existing AI models that are so popular and powerful right now. And I've seen that in my own experience, trying to tune the model to get it to give back more sophisticated data visualization results, even sort of walking it through, unless it's got a very strong tutorial path in the training documents that it's gone through. It's very difficult for it to sort of think outside the box. Unlike the way that it does with code, because there's so much more examples on GitHub of how to, for instance, access a data file. It's really cool to watch the model try to load data, realize that it doesn't have some library installed, so it installs the library, finds out that this doesn't work for some reason, installs a different library, loads the data, says, oh, this data has some kind of broken little piece here, so I'm going to change the engine that I use to process the data. I mean, it got so deep at one point that I pointed this out to a colleague of mine who's deeply involved in the Jupyter community. And he said, oh, I didn't even know Python had this functionality to change this engine to read this corrupted CSV and actually make it work. So it's really interesting to see how it can work through that, and how it is rather naive and kind of clumsy when it comes to data visualization. And Julianna, I get your point, and I totally agree with that. Really bad at the things we know how to do. So I happen to know data visualization well, but
yeah. I mean,
but
you're just describing what I did as a junior developer 10 years ago. Yeah. This is just nostalgia for me.
And have you tried the opposite? Like right now it's bad at generating data viz, but how good is it at understanding data viz? I know the models we have now, like we cannot yet give it an image and it will interpret it.
Yeah, it can't read images. I mean, it can't read schematic images. Like these models aren't trained to read diagrammatical or schematic images, so it can't read them. And reading the code, it can read the code and it can read the data sets to a certain degree well enough to fake reading the diagram. But even there, you run into the Anscombe's quartet problem, except for an AI, where it can read the data and it can read the code and it can describe to you trends in the data that actually the visualization is showing something different. So that to me is, probably like the largest area of growth in model development.
Yeah, so far we've been talking mostly about generative AI because that's what ChatGPT, that's what Stable Diffusion, all of that is. But if we go to other sections of like AI as a field, computer vision has would I say theoretically, I know for a fact is able to look at bar charts or line charts, determine does this look like a bar chart versus a line chart and at what confidence, and then try to extract data. I saw effective solutions for that going back 6 years ago. I have seen articles coming out 4 years ago about people trying this out. This is a direction I hope that the field goes in, even if we're not necessarily there right now. I did have fun. I had access to that model at one point. And so it was not trained on mountain plots, but it was trained on histograms. So we gave it the mountain plot to see what it did, and it thought it was a histogram and like guessed the data kind of wrong, but still it was close. It wasn't bad. Also, for some reason, I always thought B's were H's. Like could not see the bottom part of a B. That was a delay. So you were always going to get like your typos and the data was going to be slightly off, but it wasn't bad at extracting. This is really great for accessibility. If you have hundreds of thousands of data visualizations dating back decades, you need to suddenly make them all accessible, and you don't have access to the underlying data. If you can have a computer vision model going through, looking at your images, and then guessing at what the data is and getting like close enough, as good as a person was going to do if they were just like spot checking it, and then being able to either generate a description using maybe a large language model of like, here's a prose paragraph of what's happening in this image of what we think you should care about, or even just providing a data table saying like, this is approximately right. It's like maybe it's within 5%. Just go with it. All of that is really great for improving, for rehabilitating existing charts that are out there and making them a little bit more accessible. It can also be helpful if you're just a researcher and you see some charts out there and you just like want the data and you don't want to have to pull up Microsoft Paint and then do a bunch of math calculations for coordinates, which is definitely a thing I have done so much trying to rehabilitate charts. It's really great when something else can just do all of that menial, boring stuff for you. So computer vision is out there. It can do other stuff. It's just not necessarily as fun to talk about than watching something be created out of nothing versus being really good at guessing what someone meant when they originally created something.
I wonder if instead of alt text, we should be writing like prompts for the AI that is reading our data viz, and telling it like, you should read it this way. This thing is like that and that. Just like we put highlights on the text, we might need to put some highlights for the AI.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that alt text is the band-aid we have because we can't give people access to that underlying data. So if we were able to just magically computer vision every single chart out there, and so a blind person could just be on the page, sees a chart, and just immediately has interactive access to it where they can get access to all the data, they have sonification, all of the stuff they need to be able to get very quick understanding and grasp everything that's going on in the chart the same way a sighted person can. That would be amazing, and that would be the pinnacle of AI as far as I was concerned for the accessibility field. Alt text is just our stopgap because we can't give you complete access to everything that's in that picture.
I like the idea, Francisco, though, of making it AI accessible. Like we skip human accessibility, we just focus on making the AI's life better.
I mean, then you connect whatever you want to that AI. Yeah.
I think, Julianna, one of the challenges, because I'm not sure which model you're referring to. There was some great work out at Berkeley on restyling, regenerating charts. The challenge that I've seen with research is the same challenge I see with the current LLM implementations of data visualization, which is that they are, laser focused on the 4 charts, the only 4 charts that exist, right? Scatter plots, bar charts, line charts, and then maybe pie charts or something, or maybe histogram if you want to differentiate it from the bar chart. And we run the risk of just amplifying. I think it was Thabata who said that earlier, of amplifying the existing practices, right? Where, oh, well, the AI does a great job of doing bar charts, and now this new AI does a great job of reading bar charts. So really all you can make are bar charts. And I get concerned with that because we've already had a hard time trying to increase data visualization literacy to allow for more complex visualizations that show, patterns and systems and things like that. And that's probably my chief worry, is that we get to a point where anybody can make charts it's like the Model T, right? You can have any chart you want as long as it's the bar chart. And the AI will make it for you. The AI will read it for you. The AI will optimize your bar chart, and the AI will tell you how happy you are to receive it. So I'd love to see how we get more ambitious.
If it's not very good, sorry. at the same time, if the AI is not very good at doing data viz, maybe it should stick to the simple ones.
So this might be apocryphal, because it was before my time, but someone told me that Excel originally only had bar charts, pie charts, and maybe also scatter plots, but just like 2 or 3 things in the mid 90s. And so and it was part of a story about like why everyone hated pie charts, because it was the thing everyone used, because it was super easy to do in the tool everyone had at work. And so you just throw it up on the board. And now we all hate pie charts, to the point that I think Nightingale literally has a whole section in their submissions policy that says, please don't tell us that you hate pie charts. We know. Please stop. So I think we might get to the point of like, if AI are able to just create bar charts really well, and I mean, as they should, it's the workhorse of data visualization, that if it just gets so good at that and it's kind of boring about how it makes it, we're all just going to get to the point of we're tired of bar charts. They'll be the new pie charts. And then whatever tools are out there to generate, that are generating these chart types will innovate on new ways to show tree maps, new ways to show all sorts of different cool, like sparkly kinds of things. Like maybe you'll go through a cube and you'll be looking through a bunch of dots. And today we could look forward 10 years and be like, I don't know what is even happening with any of this. I guess I need to be trained on it. I imagine they'll do some really interesting, complicated things after we go through an initial period of only being able to do one thing well, and then everyone getting really annoyed of it, and then other people trying to come up with new ways to stand out and be different and not being the annoying thing everyone's bored of. So I assume we will have a couple of years of just like hating bar charts, but I think there will be a light on the other side of that tunnel.
Yeah, I think on that, I have like 2 thoughts. So the first one is that AI will always spit out what it has been trained on. So unless we train it into more advanced stuff, it will only amplify the basic stuff. And this is a risk. So as of right now, it's kind of a toddler in terms of what it knows, or it could know. It knows a very small portion of things. So if we're talking about data viz, it could know what a bar chart is, or what a line chart is, what a pie is, pretty much like Excel was in the 90s. But unless we feed it with the next step, it's kind of going to get stuck in that. And it's going to believe that that's the right way of doing things. And it's never going to advance because it's not creative. It's generative. It generates stuff based on what came before. So us as humans, we are creative. We create new things. We look at a piece of data and go like, what if I visualize it using a flower? What if I visualize it using an inspiration from nature? And, we make those connections. But AI doesn't. AI will say, it is structured in a way that it goes, okay, this is a data set. The way I visualize data sets are bars. So it's going to be a bar chart. And the problem with that is that as data visualization practitioners, we know that we could do more with the data, but most people who will have access to these models will just believe that bar charts are the way to go. So I think there's a double, as with everything in AI, there's kind of a double side to it. We can have very good and advanced stuff if we assist it to get there. But if we just assume that it's going to learn from there, it's never going to go past what it has already learned. And then we're going to end up with those debates where like, oh, this should have been a bar chart. Can you imagine like you ask the AI how to visualize a piece of data and they just go, this should have been a bar chart. Why did you try a novel type? So, it's kind of how it goes. And the second thing that I see is that we normally, I saw this very interesting way of looking at how AI enables us to do stuff the other day. So I think it was at the Figma conference. They depicted AI as like, here's the camera, like a room or that has a ceiling and a floor. And we have people here in all levels and all kinds of skills, right? So if we're talking about data visualization and that's our room and it has a ceiling and it has a floor, what we normally hype about AI is that it's going to increase the ceiling. And this is also what generates fear, right? Because if you're here in your skill level and the ceiling is going up, you go like, oh, no, well, what is going to happen now? But what AI also does is it lowers the floor. So if there were people here who had no idea they could access this new skill, and the floor is lowered, you gave them instant access to something new, which is brilliant from a point of giving access to different people, different skill set that they never thought they could have. But it's also risky in the sense that if this AI is just amplifying what came before, and we as a society want to move forward and do more than what came before us, what's going to happen with the people that just got into the room and it keeps telling them that the right way to do things is just bar charts, so these are kind of my 2 cents.
I think that, I mean, the question that springs to mind is what is the role of the data visualization practitioner in the future, right? Like if the AI is really good at making bar charts and they're effective enough and they're good enough, then what happens to all those people who aren't so creative, who have spent all their time just making bar charts? Are they now out of a job? What is it that people who do data visualization, who know data visualization, what is it that they do? Maybe not now, because like you said, it's a toddler, but in 6 months, it's going to be, driving a car. Where is the role of the data visualization practitioner in that future?
So one of the things that I found really interesting with AI is its ability to do style transfer. There was a controversy several months ago on YouTube. A corridor crew filmed themselves doing something and then reskinned it as in the style of an anime from the 80s. And so it became this controversy about ethics and are you stealing stuff and how is this hard and are you actually doing animation and so on. But what it was fundamentally doing was transferring a style from one to another. And that's a thing AI is really good at. And so if I can tell you a quick story from a couple of years ago, when one of the things you do for accessibility is you put line patterns. So you might have a stack bar chart and you do different kinds of line patterns for each of those bars. And a lot of people don't like doing this because they think it looks ugly. So for a Q4 report where we wanted to be accessible, one of the people who was putting that chart together literally hand drew Christmas presents in a stack. And so they all had different kinds of Christmas wrapping paper. And this was really pretty. I really liked it. It was really accessible. It took a person an hour to hand draw it out. I think right now, it would exist, or we're all writing sci-fi right now, so it'll exist in the future, where you can say, make me a stack bar chart, but draw it as if it's a set of Christmas presents. I think I saw someone in the comments saying that they wanted a data visualization that was a flower. So maybe I want a sunburst plot, and I want it to look like a sunflower that is bursting out. And so you can do these really cool visual styling that would maybe take someone who is both a data analyst and also very good at Illustrator or drawing out these complex visualizations that combine all of these different things. And it just requires a whole lot of skills that you have to combine together. But maybe AI will make that extra layer of visualization that much easier to do. And you can do these interesting visualizations that are innovating on just your visual style that aren't necessarily analytic specific. So just in terms of writing fun sci-fi about the direction this field is going, I think that would be fun. And I think that would be cool and not necessarily taking anyone's jobs away.
Yeah, I sort of agree. Yeah, I sort of agree. I don't think there's a lot of fear on oh, am I going to be out of a job or whatever. But it's the same type of fear that I think people had in the 50s. If you're an accountant in the 50s and then computers come in and they can do all the accounting, you don't need to do it by hand anymore. We still have accountants. It's just that the nature of their job changed. But they're still doing technically the same thing, but different. And it's pretty much the same. Every time a big innovation bound comes in, jobs change. It's going to change more quickly, I think, because the AI is going to evolve at a higher speed. But the human element still needs to be there. We still need to have a person guiding it somehow. We still need to have a person telling it, that this is what I am trying to do. I think we're a few leaps far from AI doing very complex things by itself. And even if it does, we are going to figure out complexer things to do. And I think that the instability and the fear right now is that we don't understand where it's going. But I think we're still going to have a role in telling AI, this is how you should be doing things. And again, if we want it to evolve, we at some point need to decide what we're going to tell it, what we're going to feed into it. And this comes into like the bias and ethics and all that discussion. But yeah, the nature of what we do might change, but we're still going to have work to do. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to dive into that bias and ethics kind of risk conversation a little bit, because each of you in your intro mentioned something to that effect and some trepidation, and that AI is thrillifying. I love that term. But, as we are the people who are in the middle of this, what is our responsibility for thinking about these biases, these risks, these ethical considerations? What should people be paying attention to as we're diving into this new-ish, next iteration of the AI world?
There's a lot of talk inside Data Viz community about how to visualize uncertainty. And I think that AI is full of uncertainty, and it could be interesting for us to see when it's, ChatGPT is showing us some text, what parts of those texts is it more certain about, less certain about? I don't know, should it be the color of the font should change or something like that? We should be helping build those things to understand that uncertainty. So when it's giving us something that is not certain or that is less certain, we can make better decisions about that. And also the biases, just like when we buy food, there's a nutrition, a table that tells you what is good, what is bad, and then based on that, you evaluate if you want to eat that or not. Those models could have better ways for us to view what's behind them. What are the biases? No model is not going to have biases, but it's important for us to know what they are and maybe even have some control over that.
I think, Francisco, you make a good point that it's a natural language interface, and so encoding it within the language that it produces, so that some parts of the answer are faded out and further faded out because it doesn't know it. The problem is I don't think that the model is performant enough to be able to tell you that in real time. And so what you'll end up doing is you'd have to run the model twice, where you say the first time give me the answer and the second time tell me how certain you are about it. And basically, at least my experience with asking about certainty and complexity, it was rather hallucinatory on those subjects. When it comes to epistemological stuff, the AI doesn't really know how to evaluate itself, and so I don't think that it like we run into this problem where the companies producing it have no desire to tell you that it's not as certain as it is. And then the AI itself is just not developed with that in mind. Though there is Claude. Claude is a constitutional AI. I don't know if you've had exposure to it. Anthropic's Claude, and it has built into it much more emphasis. It's got a smaller training set, and it's got much more emphasis on being accurate rather than giving answers all the time. So there are definitely people working on trying different approaches to providing. Especially this on this axis, but along all these axes, to provide more sort of optimized models for specific use cases and to address those kind of concerns.
I think it's just going to turn into people getting used to it being uncertain or being more, not necessarily educated, but just playing with it enough and playing with it on the things that they know about to be like, y'all, this doesn't seem like y'all know what's going on here. And just throw out another fun story. I have a friend who's a high school English teacher, and so she had an assignment about a month ago where she had ChatGPT say something about whatever book they were learning, have it write an essay, and then she printed it off and with a red pen went through and highlighted all of the things that were wrong, all of the different issues, and she printed that off and handed it to all the students, and that was their exam. Their exam was to rewrite ChatGPT's essay based on the first rough draft, as if that's what it was. So teaching kids, I guess ideally that a ChatGPT could be a good rough draft for you, but here's how you need to go through and evaluate and correct the things that are wrong with it. I think it's just going to be, we as a society are going to go through that process ourselves slowly, and some people are going to fail hilariously, like that one lawyer we all are familiar with, and we're all gonna be like, yeah, let's not be like that guy. We don't want to be Twitter's person of the day because we did something stupid, and then maybe we'll all just learn that way. But that's just what I assume is gonna happen. Back to you, Jill.
Yeah. Oh, Francisco.
No, I'm just thinking that we should do this again next year to check what are the things we
yeah.
We can all end this with predictions,
yeah.
and then come back next year and say whether or not our predictions were right.
Yes, we can do that. No, I mean, I think everybody has really good points about, just remembering what the models are trained on and how to start understanding the flaws. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about just asking it things about things that I'm an expert in and seeing where the gaps are and kind of learning that way and kind of applying that knowledge to like, oh, it's probably also flawed in similar ways across different domains. So I think that was a really good suggestion. So I think we talked a little bit about how the data viz professionals kind of still play a role in shaping how we use AI and what that means for the data visualization practice. Are there any other concerns or things that we want to highlight for practitioners to be aware of that they might not be thinking about when they start using AI in creating data viz or sharing it, or any other applications?
At this point, I think definitely give it a try. Try it out with things you know about, with things you don't know about, with fun things, with serious things, and just give it a try, explore it. But think twice before using it in your final work. Make sure you're reviewing it thoroughly.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Like, I tried, and this is like stretching it. I tried asking ChatGPT for a color palette, right? It doesn't see colors, and my curiosity was, how good is it going to be? Because it doesn't see, it doesn't really understand what it's doing very well, because it doesn't really assign meaning to colors. Like if you have a traffic light system going on or something like that, it doesn't understand the functions or how I'm going to use it. All it knows is how to predict the next word based on what I'm giving it. And if I'm asking for hex codes, what is it going to spit out? And one of the takeaways that I got from trying to make it make a color palette is that there is a different accessibility element to these types of tools. They are very good at doing something if you know how to ask them to do that thing. So this is another thing that plays into the ethics, the bias, and everything else. I know how to ask for a color palette. I know what the technical terms of a color palette means. I know how to ask it to choose a specific color model to use to generate a gradient, because I understand color theory. But if a person who's never designed before wants to prompt that, all they're going to ask is, give me a color palette. And the language model is probably going to say, I cannot do that because I don't have that. I don't have that knowledge. I don't know what a color palette is. And the recent versions actually do that. They go like, oh, I am a language model. I cannot see colors. I cannot give you a color palette. But in the beginning, it actually tried, and it actually gave you a very poorly designed color palette because that's what it knew. So there's the technicality element in it. Even if you're working with data, if somebody on a company goes and puts in, oh, analyze this data for me, it could be that ChatGPT just can't, or any AI they're using, as their assistant, can't give them any answers because they don't understand the requirement. So it's that skill of how to ask questions really well, so that the AI can understand them
But
is
that's the
kind of
same problem we have today, right? Like I think most of the data viz projects we work on, the issue is not the design or the tech or something like that, is the communication, right? And those are good language models, maybe not good communication models yet.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this little comic strip that I think summarizes very well what I'm saying that I saw on Twitter the other day, which is a designer, a boss fires the designer, puts a bot in his desk, and then goes like, oh yeah, I want a web design, make it pop, make it look modern, but also classic, and I'll know it if it's good when I see it, and whatever. The bot's just sitting there quiet. And then he asks the bot, like, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you generating anything? And the bot goes, I'm waiting for the prompt. So we as humans are good at translating intention, right? We understand the intention of another human speaking to us. AI is going to take things at face value, right? It's just going to go with the words that they're given and just going to spit out whatever it's asked. So, yeah.
We try to be good at understanding other people's intentions. I was also an intern who was told, like, go off and do this thing and it should have these 18 different things. And I'm like, how do I log in to the software? What is what's a column? What is categorical data specifically? Can numbers be categorical? Because I see the word ordinal and I don't know if those are different or the same. So it's talking to an intern.
Yeah, it is. And AI doesn't ask you anything back. They don't do follow-up questions. You know, if I don't understand something that a client asked me to do, I am going to ask lots of follow-up questions until I understand what they want before I give them an answer. With AI, it can become very frustrating very fast because somebody asks something, they just spit out something wrong, or it's not what they asked for. Then they have to ask again. Then you have to ask again, and you have to ask again and again. In the color thing, I got it to do more or less good color palette. It took me a week. So you know, it doesn't ask you back. So yeah.
I think this has been a really great conversation. We're almost at the top of the hour. So I wanted to do one more round robin just to hear from everyone, to see if you have anything else that you wanted to share with our data viz community as they start integrating AI into their data viz practice or workflow. And I love Julianna's suggestion about making a prediction for AI, and maybe we can, as a group, revisit that in a year. So Julianna, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I guess I want to be really specific about my prediction. I think we're going to start seeing more stylistic transfer applications. And so I'm going to specifically predict someone out there is going to create, if it doesn't already exist, a Tableau application or plugin that will take your charts and maybe transform them into something that's colorblind friendly or bright, or you just like give it a prompt and it'll take whatever chart you currently have and slightly change the aesthetic around just to make it a little bit prettier and pop more. So that is the prediction. I assume someone out there in the universe is going to make it happen. I also want to leave with a warning that if you are personally working on tools that integrate GPT, that you should be aware of whether or not it is generating something that is accessible, and looking in ways to intentionally make sure that there is accessibility in whatever it is your automated AI-driven data is producing. Is it all text? Is it a data table? Is it interactive sonification? What is it? You need to make sure that it is accessible and be aware of that going forward.
Great. Francisco.
Yeah, I think at the conference we did at Outlier this year, the feeling was kind of the same we have here, where we see the amazing things that those models can do, but we're very worried about it. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's just been doing kind of recklessly right now. So what I hope is that the kind of the hype cycle goes down a little bit, and it sticks where it's useful, and where it adds value, and not just as like a marketing tool.
Great. Tabata?
Oh, if I had to make a prediction, I think that a year from now, I don't know where the models are going. I would like I think from a society standpoint, I think we're going to start seeing more regulation around the way we can or cannot or should not use AI applications. We're going to start seeing more discussions in the public sphere, like, in politics, policy making, and this type of thing. And the second thing I see is that to some extent, we're going to start incorporating AI in our workflows, but not as doing the whole workflow, but doing parts of it as like an assistant more and more. So I think a year from now, we're going to be much more used to using AI to some extent to assist our jobs, to make certain parts of it for us, or with us rather. But I do think that what's going to happen as soon as the hype goes down is the regulation bit. We're going to start discussing things like privacy. Is this data safe? Are we going to have any risks with this? If AI is helping us to base a decision, what are the implications socially of those decisions? So I think that's my prediction. It's a boring prediction.
No, I don't know.
But I think it's going to happen. So.
And Elijah, what about you?
I think we're already seeing, and I think it's just going to dramatically increase the amount of people who are able to do things that we did not think that everyone could do. And so that's what I'm going to see. I'm going to expect. Like I said, we're already seeing it. Like the ability for people to create, data-driven workflows, and to write code when they could never write code before, or get access to all of the things. Because writing code is just an intermediary. Just getting access to what typically you needed to write code to get access to. I think that's going to dramatically increase. And I think it's going to force us all to think about, as more established professionals in our career paths, what is our role in that world, where small business, somebody who owns a local grocery store, can do machine learning and data analysis and produce data-driven reports that they send to their customers every week. Like I don't even think that's going to be a year off. That kind of stuff can just happen now. And that's a dramatically different world. Like, it doesn't mean that we're all going to lose our jobs, but it is a fundamental shift in what sort of technology professionals were doing before this happened.
And Jill, what is your prediction?
Oh man, my prediction is that we will have lots of continued conversation about this. It is certainly a topic that has come across my different spheres that I'm in, but I don't engage with it a lot. And so a lot of my questions that I sent around to you all before this were really questions of curiosity. And so I think we did a good job of discussing those kind of throughout the conversation. And for me personally, I don't know that I have any specific goals integrating AI into my data viz practice, but I know that from like a work and workflow perspective, there's already pieces of those tools embedded in the software that I use. So I just imagine that to be consistently increasing, but we'll see.
And whoever agrees or disagrees with us, come to the DVS Slack channel. We have a channel called Topic AI, and tell us what you think.
Yes. Let's keep the conversation going. Would love to hear other people's predictions as well. So thank you all for taking the time. This was a lovely conversation and super easy to moderate because you all have lots of thoughts, and it was great to chat with you. So we will close out for today, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.